My wife, accidentally, sent me a text meant for her lover. It was a regular Tuesday evening when my phone buzzed with a message from my wife, Emma. I was in the middle of watching a football game, half-heartedly scrolling through social media, when I glanced at the notification. Emma, I can't wait to see you tonight. I've been thinking about you all day. Last night was incredible. I stared at the words, my breath catching in my throat. My fingers trembled as I read the message again, hoping I had misunderstood. Maybe it was a joke, or maybe it was meant for me. But deep down, I knew. Emma had never spoken to me like that. A wave of cold realization washed over me. My stomach twisted into knots as I debated what to do. Should I respond? Should I call her? Or should I wait and see if she even noticed her mistake? A few minutes passed before my phone buzzed again. Emma. Oh my God. Ignore that last message. It was meant for Jessica. We were talking about her date last night. LOL, my bad. My heart pounded. It was an excuse, a weak one at that. Jessica was Emma's best friend, but something about the way she rushed to cover it up didn't sit right with me. I didn't reply. Instead, I sat there, staring at the screen, replaying the last few months in my head. Had there been signs? Late nights at work? The sudden increase in gym sessions? The way she'd been distant, her laughter sounding a little too forced when she was around me? I clenched my jaw. If she was lying, I had to know the truth. So I made a decision. I was going to play dumb. Pretend I believed her while I started my own investigation. Because if my wife was cheating on me, I needed proof. I forced myself to act normal that evening. When Emma walked through the door, she greeted me with a kiss on the cheek, her smile a little too bright, her voice a little too casual. Hey, babe, she said, tossing her purse on the counter. How was your day? I smiled back, pretending I hadn't just spent the last hour analyzing every interaction we'd had over the past few months. Good, just work stuff, I said, shrugging. You? She hesitated for a fraction of a second. Same, the usual. I nodded and let it go, for now, but I had already started my plan. That night, while she was in the shower, I picked up her phone from the nightstand. It was locked, of course. But I knew Emma's passcode, our anniversary. My hands were shaking as I typed it in. The screen unlocked. I took a deep breath and went straight to her messages. Jessica's name was at the top, just as she'd claimed. But when I tapped on the conversation, my stomach dropped. The message she had accidentally sent me? It wasn't there. She had deleted it. A chill ran down my spine. She was covering her tracks. I scrolled through the rest of her messages. There was nothing suspicious, no messages to an unknown number, no flirty exchanges. Either she was careful or she was using another app to talk to whoever this person was. I needed another angle. The next morning, after she left for work, I checked our shared phone bill. My hands tightened around my coffee mug when I saw it. One number repeated over and over again. Late at night, during her lunch breaks, on weekends when I was out running errands. I copied the number and did a quick search. No name, no business, nothing official. Just an anonymous number. I exhaled slowly. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining this. Emma was hiding something, and I was going to find out what. The days that followed were a blur. I became obsessed. Every text, every call, every minute she spent away from me, I scrutinized. My mind couldn't focus on anything else. Work? A distraction? Friends? I pushed them aside. I had to figure out the truth. I couldn't shake the image of that message. Last night was incredible. Who was she talking about? It had been 3 days since I found the repeated number on the phone bill, and I had done everything in my power to avoid Emma, just enough to stay unnoticed while I quietly gathered information. But the more I learned, the worse it became. That night, I stayed up late, my laptop open with the search engine on screen. The number, I'd learned, wasn't registered to a name, at least not one that was easily found. But I had a new idea. I could track the number using social media. People use their numbers to sign up for everything: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. There had to be something. After an hour of searching, I finally hit pay dirt. A Facebook profile popped up. The name was unfamiliar: Ethan Clark. The profile picture was a smiling man in his 30s, wearing a black leather jacket, looking confident, almost too confident. His profile showed no public posts, but there was something in his About section: a location, a bar downtown. I felt a knot in my stomach. I had to know more. The next day, when Emma came home from work, I felt the air between us shift. There was a tension, a quiet discomfort that I couldn't ignore. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I asked, "How was work today?" "Busy," she replied, setting her purse down on the counter. "Same old." I nodded. "Anything interesting happen?" She hesitated. "No, not really. Same stuff, you know." The hesitation wasn't lost on me. A part of me wanted to confront her right there and demand the truth. But another part of me, something darker, told me to wait. Wait until I had everything. I wasn't going to be played for a fool. That evening after dinner, I made an excuse to go out. "I'm going to grab some beers with Mark," I said. She barely looked up from her phone. "Okay, have fun." I didn't go to Mark's place. I drove straight to the bar. It wasn't hard to find Ethan Clark. He was sitting in the back corner, his eyes scanning the room as if he were waiting for someone. I stood just outside the door, watching him. He didn't look like a man caught in the act, but he certainly didn't look like someone who should be with my wife. I knew it was time. I turned and left, my heart pounding in my chest. I barely slept that night. My mind raced with images of Ethan, sitting there in that bar, waiting for Emma. I couldn't focus. I couldn't think of anything else. The next morning, I went into work a little late. I needed some space. I needed time to plan my next move. By the time I came back home, Emma was already there, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, her eyes a little red, her hair pulled back messily. She looked up as I walked in, a faint smile on her lips. "Hey, you're home early," she said, her voice soft but nervous. I didn't smile back. I didn't answer. I walked straight past her, heading into the bedroom. I could feel her eyes following me. The silence between us felt thick, suffocating. I opened the drawer where I kept my stuff, pulling out a small black box. It was an old gift, one I'd never gotten around to giving her. A part of me had always thought I'd save it for a special occasion, but now I was going to use it for something else. I walked back into the kitchen, and there she was. Her face was pale now, her smile gone. "Do you have something to tell me?" I asked, my voice steady but with an edge. She looked confused for a moment, then anxious. "What do you mean?" I threw the phone bill on the table, the repeated number glaring at her. "I know about Ethan," I said, each word slow and deliberate. Her face turned pale. She didn't say anything at first. She just stared at me, her hands trembling slightly as she picked up her coffee cup and took a sip. "Who is he, Emma?" I asked again, leaning in. "Because he's not your friend, and he's sure as hell not someone you should be texting like that." She dropped the cup, the porcelain shattering against the floor. "Damn it, just let me explain," she cried, her voice shaking. I didn't move, not even an inch. She wiped away the tears forming in her eyes, swallowing hard. "I wasn't going to tell you, but Ethan is someone I've been seeing for a few months now." My chest tightened, my vision blurring. "I'm sorry, okay? I never wanted to hurt you. You've been so distant lately, and I didn't know how to deal with it. He made me feel seen, made me feel wanted again." I stepped back, stunned. "So it's been going on for months? Behind my back?" She nodded, her face crumpling. "Yes, and I'm sorry. I should have ended it sooner, but I couldn't. I kept thinking I could make things work with you. But then it just got complicated." I felt a strange sense of detachment wash over me. I had suspected it, but hearing her admit it out loud made it all too real. "I don't know how to fix this," she whispered. "I love you, but I can't let go of him." I stood there, silent, processing everything. The trust, the years we'd spent together, it all felt like it was crumbling in front of me. "You need to make a choice, Emma," I said finally, my voice quiet but firm. "You either stay with him or you come back to me. But you can't have both. I won't be part of your lies anymore." She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "I never wanted to hurt you, but I don't know if I can walk away from him." I turned and walked to the door, not looking back. "Then I guess that's your answer." The door slammed behind me. I didn't go far. I needed some air, some space to think. My car was parked in the driveway, but I didn't drive anywhere. I just sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel, my mind spinning. How did it come to this? How did I get here, sitting in my car, trying to hold on to the shards of a life that no longer felt like mine? For a long while, I just stared at the dashboard, my thoughts drowning me. Emma's words echoed in my head, her tear-filled confession. I can't let go of him. I didn't know what hurt more. The fact that she had betrayed me, or the way she was still holding on to Ethan, even after everything we had built together. After what felt like hours, I finally got out of the car and walked back into the house. The door was still open. Emma hadn't moved. She was sitting at the kitchen table again, her face buried in her hands, her sobs quiet but constant. I took a deep breath and walked toward her, but I didn't know what to say. What could I say? There were no words that could undo the damage. "Emma," I started, my voice surprisingly steady. "I need to know, who are you really? The woman who loves me, or the one who's so caught up in this affair she's willing to throw everything away?" She looked up at me, her face puffy, her eyes red from crying. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know who I am anymore. I never meant for things to get this out of hand." I stood there, my heart heavy but also tired. I was exhausted from the lies, from the uncertainty, from the confusion. The trust we had was gone. She had already made her choice in a way. "I don't think I can live with this anymore, Emma," I said softly. "Not with the constant lies, not with the fear that you're still seeing him behind my back." Her eyes filled with more tears. "Please don't do this. I love you, I do. I've just been lost. I thought I could have both, but I realize now how wrong that was. I'm sorry. Please give me another chance." I stood there, my mind racing. Could I trust her again? Could I forgive her for everything she had done? Part of me wanted to. Part of me still loved her, the way I did before all of this. But the other part, the one that had been betrayed and hurt, was done. "I can't do this anymore, Emma," I said, finally making the decision that had been gnawing at me for days. "I need time. I need space to figure out if there's anything left for us. But right now, I can't look at you the same way." Her sobs grew louder, but I couldn't give in. I couldn't go back to a life of pretending everything was okay when it clearly wasn't. I grabbed my jacket from the back of the chair. "I'll be staying with Mark for a while," I said, voice steady but cold. "I can't be here right now." I didn't wait for her to respond. I just turned and walked out the door. I spent the next few days at Mark's place. He was a good friend, and I knew he wouldn't ask too many questions, at least not right away. But the silence in his apartment, the lack of my usual routine, was deafening. It was like the world had gone still, waiting for me to make a decision I wasn't sure I was ready for. Mark had been there for me through thick and thin, but this was different. This wasn't some minor argument or disagreement. This was betrayal. It wasn't something I could easily shake off. Every night I lay awake on the couch, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Emma, her face tear-streaked and desperate. "Please give me another chance." I could still hear her voice in my head, still feel the weight of her hands gripping mine, begging for forgiveness. But it felt hollow now. The love we shared, the trust I had for her, all of it seemed like it belonged to someone else. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for. A sign? A moment of clarity? But all I got was the endless swirl of doubt, anger, and sadness. By the 5th day, I couldn't stay in limbo any longer. I called Emma. It rang twice before she picked up. Hello? Her voice was tentative, almost afraid. I took a deep breath. We need to talk. There was a long pause. When? She asked, her voice small. Tonight? At the house. I didn't want to wait any longer. If I was going to make a decision, I needed to do it in person. I'll be there, she whispered. That evening, I returned to the house, my footsteps heavier than I remembered. The place felt different. It wasn't just the furniture or the clutter that always collected by the door. It was the absence of something that had once felt so secure. I walked in, setting my bag down, and waited. She arrived about 20 minutes later. Her car pulled into the driveway, and I watched from the window as she hesitated, took a deep breath, and then made her way to the front door. When she knocked, it echoed through the house. I opened the door, and for the first time in days, I saw her without the cloud of anger and hurt between us. She was still the woman I had loved, but it felt like she was a stranger too. Hi, she said softly, avoiding my eyes. I nodded and stepped aside to let her in. She looked around but didn't speak. It was like she was afraid to break the silence. I led her to the living room, and we sat down on opposite sides of the couch, both of us at a distance we hadn't had in years. Emma, I started, my voice steady but quieter than I intended. I don't know what I expected coming here today. I thought maybe I'd have some kind of clarity, but all I have is more confusion. I paused. I need to know, what do you want? Her eyes welled up again, but she blinked the tears away. I want you, Jake. I do. I made a mistake. I let myself get carried away, and I ruined everything. She grabbed my hands, her grip tight but not desperate. But I love you. I never stopped loving you. I know I messed up. But I can't change what's already been done. All I can do is ask for your forgiveness. I pulled my hands away slowly, not out of anger, but because I couldn't bring myself to hold on to her the way I used to. Forgiveness is not something I can just give you, Emma. You broke something between us, and I don't know if it's fixable. Her shoulders slumped. She was shaking now, her voice a whisper. Please, please just give me a chance to make it right. I'll do whatever it takes. I looked at her, seeing the woman who had shared so much of her life with me. But I also saw someone who had hidden a side of herself I could no longer ignore. Emma, I said, my voice breaking a little. I loved you, I still do, but I don't know if I can ever trust you again. The pain, the lies, I don't know if I can live with them. I need to figure out what's best for me, what's best for both of us. She closed her eyes, tears spilling down her cheeks. I understand, she whispered. I know you have every right to be angry, but I'm asking you please to think about this. I can't promise I'll be perfect, but I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to you. I stood up, walking toward the door. I can't make any promises either, Emma. I need time. I need space to think this through. As I opened the door, I turned back to her. I'll be in touch when I know what I want, but right now I think we both need some time apart. She nodded, her lips trembling as she whispered, I'm sorry. And then I stepped outside. The door clicked shut behind me, leaving the weight of our choices hanging in the air. I didn't know what came next, but I knew one thing. Whatever happened, I had to figure out who I was without her, and whether we could ever be the same again. Weeks passed. The silence between Emma and me stretched longer than I ever thought possible. We avoided each other's calls, rarely exchanged texts, and the house became an empty shell. I stayed at Mark's, and every day I wrestled with the decision I had to make. Was there a future for us? Or had the damage been done beyond repair? Then, one night, I got a call. It was Emma. I didn't answer. I stared at the phone screen, my heart racing, unsure of what I was feeling anymore. The anger, the sadness, the confusion. It all felt like a distant memory now. I had tried to move on, but no matter how hard I tried, a part of me still clung to the idea of what we had been. The next morning, I returned to the house. I needed closure, whatever that looked like. Emma wasn't home, but I found a letter on the kitchen table written in her familiar handwriting. It was simple, but it carried the weight of everything she couldn't say in person. Jake, I've made my choice. I'm leaving. I'm going to be with Ethan. I never thought I'd say this, but I need to follow my heart. I hurt you, and for that, I will always be sorry. You deserve someone who can give you all of me, and I couldn't do that while I was torn between the two of you. I'll always love you, but I can't keep living this lie. Goodbye, Emma. I sat there for a long time, staring at the letter, my hands trembling. I couldn't believe what I was reading. She had made her choice. After everything, she had walked away without even waiting for me to decide. She chose him. And I? I was left in the ruins of a life that had once felt so certain. Suddenly, the door opened, and I turned to see her standing there. She looked at me for a long moment, her eyes swollen, red from crying. But she didn't say anything. She just stood in the doorway, her suitcase in hand. I didn't want to hurt you, she said quietly, her voice cracking. But I've already hurt you more than you know. I stood up, every muscle in my body tense, my heart beating faster with each word she spoke. You should have told me this before, I said, my voice steady but cold. Before you put me through all of this. Her lip quivered. I know, she whispered, taking a step closer. But I couldn't. I wasn't ready to admit it. Not until I was sure. I stared at her. The woman I had loved. The woman who was walking away from me without so much as a second glance. Well, I guess you're sure now. I didn't know why I was angry. Maybe I was angry with myself for letting it get this far. Angry at her for not choosing me sooner. Emma stepped back, a tear slipping down her cheek. I'm so sorry, Jake. I'll always care about you, but I have to go now. For a moment, I thought I might collapse. The weight of her words, the finality of them, was too much to bear. But somehow I stayed standing. I didn't cry. I didn't beg her to stay. I just watched her walk out the door, the sound of her suitcase wheels echoing through the house. The door shut behind her with a final, deafening click. And I was alone. Days turned into weeks, and the house slowly became a home again, but not the way it had been. I spent my days trying to move forward, but every time I thought I was ready to put Emma behind me, I found myself haunted by memories. There were flashes of her laugh, her touch, the way she used to look at me when she said she loved me. But those moments felt distant now, like a dream I had once lived. A month later, I ran into Ethan at the local coffee shop. He didn't recognize me at first. He just walked past me, too busy talking to his friends. But then I saw it. He wore the same leather jacket Emma had once complimented me on. For a moment, I thought about confronting him, about asking how it felt to take everything from me. But I didn't. I didn't care anymore. I turned and walked out of the coffee shop. The sun was shining and the world still moved on, just like it always had. Only now, I was one person lighter. And as I stepped into my car, I realized maybe that was for the best.